to go ahead and get started. Laura, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Wonderful. So my name is Sarah Lang. I work at the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. And here with me today is Laura Sibilia, one of my colleagues here at BDCC. And we are here to talk to you about submitting a project to the 2019 Southern Vermont Zone CEDS. I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and she will give you some high-level background information as well as talk about the document itself, and then I will take over and go through the actual form where you will be submitting a project. So Laura, take it away.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So we are here today to talk about submitting a project to the new two-county Southern Vermont Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. To be clear and to make sure we're all on the same page, we'd like to go over what that is. A comprehensive economic development strategy is a construct of the federal government and the economic...
Hi, everybody. This is Diana Wally.
A 5-year regional plan to address the following areas: the economy, population, our geography, workforce development, transportation access, resources, and environment. So this is the plan looking at all of those items that will that has helped us develop a plan to grow our economy in Southern Vermont, Windham and Bennington counties in the next 5 years. We have been doing this CEDS process and seeking projects for the CEDS since 2014. What is different in 2019? Well, the 2014 Windham CEDS was a single region, the Windham region. And the 2019 CEDS is, as I noted earlier, Windham and Bennington counties, all of those towns together. The CEDS for those two counties, the draft CEDS has recently been released. We'll have a link showing where you can access that, and we are soliciting projects now for that CEDS. That CEDS was created by the Bennington Regional Economic Development Group and the Windham Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies Group. Those volunteer boards work with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, the Bennington County Industrial Corporation, and the Bennington County Regional Commission. Right now, we are in the process of developing, we're about halfway through, assembling a new Southern Vermont Project Ranking Committee. Those are members from the Southern Vermont community. We intentionally seek those who are not already serving on either the RED or CEDS boards and who have a variety of different public sector, private sector, government, education backgrounds. All of the projects that we receive as part of this process will be included in the 2019 Southern Vermont CEDS, and the ranking of those projects will be announced at the May 23rd, 3rd Annual Southern Vermont Economy Summit.
Great. Laura, if you could just speak up a little bit, I think some people are having a little hard time hearing.
Sure. I'm going to take the handset off the phone and see if
Great.
So a little bit about the 2019 CEDS. We'll go over high level the objectives included in there. And again, in order to see more detail on the CEDS, we'll give you the URL at the end of this presentation. So in the 2019 Southern Vermont CEDS, our first objective is to increase our population. There are a number of strategies looking at attracting more people to live in Southern Vermont, to participate in the community, the workforce, and to support the business and civic environment. We are also looking to expand our business infrastructure and creating an environment that will encourage more jobs and opportunities in Southern Vermont. We will be looking to improve our physical infrastructure by making critical infrastructure improvements so that Southern Vermont is resident and business ready. Items included in here include the development of water and sewer infrastructure, broadband cell infrastructure, etc. We are also looking to enhance our social infrastructure by improving the quality of life and stability for all of our existing residents and all who may want to come and enjoy this place where we live. We are also looking to strengthen our economic development capacity by enhancing the ability for our economic development professionals and partners to play a role in implementation. One of our greatest strengths in Windham and Bennington counties in terms of economic development has been our ability to take small, disparate organizations and connect them together, to connect volunteers throughout the two counties in order to learn, grow, and take action. And so the rural nature and the scale of our efforts really require this ability to continue to help those who are helping us move forward learn and do more and better. Okay, so what is the value of submitting your project? In many areas, the submission of a CEDS project is done simply to ensure that that your project will be able to apply for certain types of federal funds. Many different federal funders require that there be a CEDS in place in the region in order for you to apply for funds. And it is great to be able to note in your application that, in fact, you have read that CEDS, you understand what the region is trying to do, and how your project relates to that planning and effort. We also feel that it's important in Southern Vermont to submit these projects because it helps the state and regional partners really understand your project and effort in a region, which may help us increase access to technical assistance and help us bring awareness of financial resources to you. While there is no guarantee of funding for any project that is submitted, those that are looking for funding, particularly in the coming year, are encouraged to submit projects as the publicity and the potential technical assistance may be helpful as you are seeking funding from other avenues.
Great. So I think we're at a point where if anyone has any questions for Laura on sort of the high-level objectives or reasons why you should be submitting a CEDS project, now would be a great time. I do have everyone muted, only because it gets kind of hectic. But if you do have a question at the moment, please type it into the chat function and we can answer that. Again, Laura and I are both reachable by phone or email, so if this is, if you have an offline question, you'll be sure to get our contact information here at the end to ask anything specific. So I'm going to continue on with the, we have a question. Okay. Mike Cole is asking, will the results rank all entries against one another or against a standard set of acceptability?
So it's really both, Mike. We have the objectives that we just talked about that we are trying to achieve. And so the folks that look at all of the projects will be keeping those objectives in mind. And your project will be ranked with other projects similar to it. So we intend to put projects into categories. And so, for instance, major investments or infrastructure, et cetera. No, there is no grade of acceptability. It is not pass-fail. Every project will be included in the CEDS. The only advantage to the ranking is a bit more notoriety. It is likely that there will be, as there have been in past years, an unknown number, probably under 10, of projects from across southern Vermont that are elevated to and identified as quote-unquote vital projects. Those projects, as I said, benefit from slightly more public notoriety and an elevation by the group that these projects may be some of the more urgent projects looking for technical assistance. There are not lists of entities or philanthropics who have said they will be looking at these results to make funding awards, with the exception of federal government. So the EDA tends to work more and more with other entities trying to leverage dollars, knowledge, and resources. So if we had, for instance, a water project, which is a fairly standard project, come out of Bennington, looking for EDA infrastructure funding, one of the questions on that application would be, is there a CEDS in place? And the answer would be yes. Presumably the submitter would also note that in that CEDS there was a highlighting of the need to improve our physical infrastructure, and specifically our water infrastructure. And this is where it starts to build help when folks are taking their projects out to other entities. So I hope that answers your question, Mike.
Great. Well, let's move on because I think some of the next stuff we'll cover might clarify some people's questions, like going through the actual form. And so let's move on to that. So to the question of, Mike was asking sort of is there a pass-fail? What is the grade? It's just important to note that projects will be prioritized and ranked based on how each of the projects advances those CEDS objectives that Laura covered towards the beginning, the 5 objectives. And the ranking committee will also look at a project's readiness to begin, its partners, and investments made. And so I want to direct you to this web page. This is where all of the Southern Vermont Zone CEDS information is being stored, including a link to the project submission form. So this is what it should look like. Nice orange page, you can't miss it. When you scroll down, the very first section is the project submission, and you have these 3 giant buttons. This first one here, will take you to the submission form. This one here is for the CEDS, the draft CEDS report. And then this one here is for the action matrix. Now, before we get into the submission form, I do just want to open up the report in the matrix so you can see what that looks like. I do want to know we're currently in a 30-day public comment period. So if you are going to be looking at this within those 30 days and you have comments, please provide that to, is it to us, Laura, or to Rachel?
those comments come in to me.
Okay, so any comments on the report or matrix go to Laura. And so let me just open this here. And it will bring up, it'll basically download a Word document. And I just want to open it so you can see what it looks like. So this is where a lot of sort of the background information about the organizations that have been involved, existing conditions, sort of the process that we went through. There is an executive summary page for those of you who want short and sweet. And then, again, sort of going through the value statement that the groups came up with the public input, our goal statements, objectives, priority actions. So this is something I suggest everyone at least take a look at when submitting a project, because the background is very important when showing how your project aligns with those CEDS objectives. So take a look at that, and then let's take a brief look at the action matrix. Now here you'll see Laura had brought up the strategies. So we had talked briefly about the objectives. So here you see increase our population. And then within each objective, we identified strategies. So 1A, 1B, 1C, so on. So for instance, one of the strategies under increase our population is retain and attract young people. And then next to the strategy, you see different actions. And then next to that, priority level, resource level, and measures for progress and success. So this document, if anything, will be the most important when submitting your project, because in the submission form, we ask which objectives and which strategies of those objectives does your project closely align with or help accomplish those strategies and objectives. So I highly suggest reviewing this before submitting your project. Okay, so that is all on that bright orange page. Now let's go to the submission form link, which is this first button here. So here, for those of you who have submitted CEDS projects in the past to the 2014 Wyndham CEDS that Laura briefly touched on earlier, you'll notice that this form looks a lot different than the past submission forms. And that is because we wanted to try and streamline it. We wanted to make it more straightforward, simple, and basically shorter, so that you didn't have to spend too much time on this, but we still get the information that we need, or that the review committee needs to make their rankings. So again, just noting the projects will be prioritized and ranked based on how each project advances the CEDS objectives, as well as readiness to begin, partners, and investments. Again, here's the link, which brings you back to the page. That will take you to the matrix. And then we move into the form. Now again, some standard things: project title, contact name, email address, geographic region. So it looks a little confusing, but basically we're asking if you're a single town, if your project encompasses a single town in one of the regions, multiple towns within the regions, the whole Bennington County, whole Wyndham region, or all of southern Vermont. And this is just important for the review committee to understand sort of the reach of your project. Like Laura had mentioned, to Mike's question, we will be putting projects into categories. These categories are infrastructure, major investment, private, public sector, programmatic, sustainability, resilience, transportation, workforce, economic development. Now this is going to help the project review committee compare and rank apples to apples. So please be sure to select the appropriate category. Next, we have a project description. We've limited it to 500 words. This is, high level, what your project is about. The next question is really important. Is your project ready to begin or already underway? Laura, do you want to touch a little bit on somebody autos?
Yes. So what we are really looking for is ownership on projects. So we love good ideas, but this is not the place to submit good ideas. We typically call those somebody autos. What we are looking for is project submissions from people who are prepared either now or prepared in the future, organizing in the future to take responsibility for implementing and moving a project forward.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, next is your project budget. Of course, this is important to understanding, where your project sits, what the budget looks like, also about how much funding has been spent or pledged to the project. Next is sort of attachments that we would like to, if you do have these for your project, it would be nice to know that you have them. There is also a portion at the very end where you can attach a business plan or a feasibility study. And this is you can attach it to the end, like I said. Sorry, we have a question here. Let's take a look. Can you comment on project submissions from individuals, or if it's expected there is a corporation submitting? No, it can be submitted by an individual, a volunteer committee, a private business. It's really anyone. The key is ownership of the project. Laura, I don't know if you want to touch on anything more to that question.
No, I mean, we've had volunteer groups submit projects before, groups that were just getting started, as well as major corporations. We've had municipalities, any different many different types of entities have submitted projects.
Yep.
But that responsibility piece for implementation is the key factor.
Right. So next, we ask for a list of partners and investors. Keep in mind that this is a public document, so if there is any confidential information, please redact that from what you give us. But this sort of speaks to collaboration with your project and within the region, so it's great to know that you have partners and investors on board, ready to jump to action if not already in action. Next, we have a question for those who have submitted projects to the 2014 Wyndham CEDS. And this is just a checkbox saying that, yes, my project, I had submitted it in the past. And then this is just to understand that you have been part of this process since before this 2019 Southern Vermont CEDS, and just allows us to look back in our files to see the previous submissions if need be. All right, next is sort of the meat of it. This is where we get to the objectives. And again, hopefully more or less straightforward, check boxes for each CEDS objective, and then the strategies. Now, if your project addresses increasing, or any of the objectives, but for example, the first one, increasing our population, if it cannot be attached to any of the 3 or however many strategies that are identified, but it does contribute to that objective, there is this checkbox, which is basically saying my project addresses the objectives but does not fall under a strategy that's listed. Now, if your project does not address this objective, all you have to do is click the NA box, okay? And then each of the objectives has a short little, basically, explanation. Please explain how. So if you were to have checked that, my project attracts and retains young people, we just want a sentence or 2 here about how. And then so on and so forth. As you can see, Objective 2, in the gray, here are all the strategies, here's the other, and here's the NA, and the explanation box. Again, Objective 3, strategies, other, NA, Objective 4, Objective 5, and then the attachments. We have up to 3. Again, we're trying to not make the packet of information that we give to the project review committee overwhelming. They don't need stacks of papers to, sort of evaluate each project. However, if there is some important documents that you wish for us to have when considering, then please attach that there. Looks like we have another question. Can you check more than one option? Yes, you could check every single box in every single row if you felt like it. Not if you felt like it, I'm sorry, if your project addresses those strategies. And so you can see here as I'm clicking, it allows you to click more than one, but please only click the strategies and the objectives for which your project addresses. Let's see, we have, can you please share examples of projects that have been submitted in the past? Laura, do you want to take this one?
Yes. So we have had a number of projects. One, I'm trying to think of some of the past really high-ranking projects. We had WheelPad, which is a startup operation out of Wilmington, which is creating basically a tiny home, mobile tiny home for folks who are in wheelchairs or handicapped to roll up to a home for temporary or permanent accessibility. We have had the Rich Earth Institute, which is again another entrepreneurial activity looking at urine diversion and new toilet facilities that had submitted a project. We have had the Southern Vermont Marketing and Recruitment project, which is something that came out of the BDCC and BCRC after flood recovery, articulating how a plan to communicate together, to raise funds together and communicate together about coming to live in Southern Vermont. We have had projects submitted by the major resorts on their on new base lodges, on improvements to some of their existing facilities. The Twin Valley High School in Wilmington, which stopped operating as a school. It's now called the Old School Enrichment Center. The volunteer group that came together around that submits projects typically on what it is their next endeavor is that they would like to take on with that project in terms of improving it or fixing some aspect of it. So that's a number of different projects. So.
And this is a question that we've had asked multiple times, and so what I can do is on that bright orange page under the Zone CEDS project submissions down here, I will put a link to a document that shows past projects that have been submitted if you want some examples. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and I will post that on the website as well, so that if you need to review or you want to listen back or you know somebody that couldn't attend but wanted to, they can find all of this information. As far as the timeline, we are accepting submissions through March 1st at 5 p.m. Between March 1st and April 1st, The project review committee will be reviewing and ranking all of the projects, and then the project rankings will be released at the Southern Vermont Economy Summit on May 23rd. And so by then, we will have the list, we will have the vital projects, and you will hear from us. Okay, let's see. We have another question. Can you please tell us about the time frames for the next opportunity to submit projects, i.e. next year? So we do project submissions on a yearly basis. So every year, we either ask you to submit a new project or an update to a project that you have already submitted. And so typically, it will be a very similar time frame. We'll probably accept project submissions late fall or mid to early to mid-winter, with sort of the same timeline for releasing those rankings at the summit every year, which happens in May.
So I would add to that the process that we're talking about right now is for inclusion in the annual CEDS ranking of projects. But if you have a project that you are looking to get some assistance with or get started on, and it is falling, you're needing assistance or to talk with folks outside of the submission period, the BDCC, the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, and the Bennington County Industrial Corporation in Bennington are organizations that work with individuals on projects throughout the year. And so you can get assistance in better organizing your business case, assessing your financials, connecting you with additional resources to move your business plan along. So we definitely want to see these projects and have them included in the CEDS annual ranking. We think that the publicity is helpful for folks, but if you miss this deadline, please don't feel that you're unable to talk to us about your project. We still would like to know about them.
Yes, that's a great point. And so that's, I think, a summation of the CEDS project timeline and the submission process. We can take a few questions here before we finish up the webinar. But please keep in mind, you can reach me here at my email, slang@brattleborodevelopment.com, or by my phone number. And also this link is where you can find everything CEDS, past documents, past presentations, et cetera, et cetera. Link to the project submission form. Looks like we have another question here. Can you comment on how previous winning projects have been funded as a result of being selected?
So I would hesitate to call them winning. As I said, all projects are included in the CEDS. Some are more highly ranked than others. WheelPad has, we cannot take credit for all of the funding and success of the projects, but we can point to a number of very successful projects. So, for instance, WheelPad, which has received startup funds as well as some pretty significant national support. Storm Petrol, which is a project that was born out of recovery from Tropical Storm Irene in Halifax. It was a software company, and that company ended up being awarded pretty significant contracts throughout the country in disaster recovery. It's over $1 million a year company at this point, a few years later. The Rich Earth Institute continues to draw pretty significant research facilities and funding to itself. So I would list those things.
Great. Well, if there are no other questions here in the immediate, we can call this webinar to a close. And again, please do not hesitate to reach out. Here's my email. If you are wanting to get in touch with the Bennington County partners, I'd be happy to connect you. If you don't already have their contact information, just shoot me an email. And we look forward to seeing all of the projects that have been submitted. Any closing words, Laura?
That's it.
That's
Thank
it.
you so
All right.
much.
Thank you, everyone. We'll talk with you soon.